Hey guys, welcome to my channel. This is Paula with Paula's Imperfect Plans, and here I share with you my personal planning as a wife, a mother, a farmer, and a professional in a nonprofit, and what I use to help me be efficient and effective in all those areas of my life, getting everywhere where they need to be, when they need to be there for my family of 5. So today I want to do a general budget overview video. I actually filmed this once and it was a whole issue, and so I don't have that footage. So I'm refilming this and I'm making some changes to my budgeting. So initially I was doing some different things that I'm branching out. So I've followed the Budget Mom and the Budget by Paycheck for years. I watch Life in Envelopes here on YouTube and watch her budgeting. And I can certainly understand that budgeting can be super overwhelming. And so I wanted to show how I do things simply, or a little bit more simply. And I think the biggest thing, and a couple of the biggest things that have been helpful to me in my years of budgeting, I've been single on minimum wage, and I've been, a 2-person household with, variable and inconsistent income and or minimum wage. So I have kind of a wide variety of budgeting and income situations in my areas of expertise. And so I wanted to show you just an overview of a couple of the things that I do that have been really helpful to me in my budgeting journey, because I know some of the things that you see, and specifically the ones that I watch, that I would like to emulate as I work to adapt and change my budget, seem super overwhelming at first. So if that's something that you think you're interested in, definitely stick around and we'll get to that point. So I have shared in my 2023 stack video that this is the notebook that I use for my budget. This is an Erin Condren 7x9, just a plain notebook is what I'm doing this year, so I can kind of personalize it and customize it however I want. It's like a perfect size right now, but I was using it for something else, and I've actually ripped out the pages of the stuff I was using, so it doesn't feel quite as full. But anyway, that's giving me an opportunity to really utilize it with stickers. So I don't necessarily need a monthly, but I already have a budget planner picked out for next year. But so I just put in here, 2023 overview, used a dot marker to dot the days we get paid. My husband and I each get paid every 2 weeks. We get paid on the same dates, which is really convenient. So we get paid 26 times a year, with the extra paychecks months in June and December this year. I made a little bit of a list of ideas for birthday tracking, or not birthday tracking. I made a list of ideas of birthday gifts for family members this year. And so this is how my budget has evolved. I've been in here since our second February paycheck. So I track our income in these boxes that I drew out myself. I track our fixed expenses in total. So I do the budget like ahead of time, a few days ahead of time, as I'm planning for payday. Everything I would like to pay, I'm generally pretty aware that I'm not going to be able to do all those things. On the back of the page, when I started, sinking funds, variable and cash expenses, and then kind of extra savings or other bills, not sinking funds, but savings, debt, extra, whatever. And so when I go through, I do this and kind of budget it out ahead of time for things that I'm planning, things that I know are coming up. If I get a bill, I might put it in here for a budgeted expense if I know ahead of time what it's going to be. This is when I come back in on payday our actual check amounts and all those actual payments. So the two things that have been super helpful for me, and I've been doing this for years, is figuring out when we have fairly fixed income. Our checks are different because of some of the different deductions that don't come out both paychecks of the month. So, I don't get paid the same amount every 2 weeks, but my first paycheck should be the same as all my first paychecks, and my second the same as all my second paychecks, if that makes sense. Just because of what I have for deductions, some of it comes out every check, and sometimes things only come out once a month. And then So then I know the actual, when I come in here and get paid, I know what all these bills are. I know what they are because that's just how I've set it up, that I know what things are going to be and I have them figured that way. And the biggest thing is figuring out which things need to come out of which paycheck so that they can be paid on time, not be late. A lot of people struggle with paying rent on the 1st, for instance, because their first paycheck of the month doesn't come till the 4th or the 5th. When I had a mortgage payment that was due on the 1st, it came out of, I don't even remember now, but it was specifically, my February house payment was coming out of a paycheck in January, and I was writing that check and planning for it to come out ahead of time. That requires kind of getting ahead so that you have the ability to do that, and I'm aware that that's that is something that I've had to work at, but getting ahead on some of those expenses so that in January, I'm paying bills due in February, so you're not constantly playing catch up. So figuring out which paychecks need which things. So this is our first paycheck, and out of our first paycheck of the month, we have our REC, which is our electric bill. We pay daycare every paycheck because we have to pay for daycare if we want to our kid to go there. We give money to the church. My life insurance bill comes out of the first paycheck, and Gendro, which is our dumpster being emptied weekly. That comes out of our first paycheck. I also have, I'll go over my sinking funds in a minute, but I pay for car insurance, car gas with the first paycheck. I'm saving up money for summer daycare and LP. And then out of the first check, the variable and cash envelopes, we have a grocery cash envelope. Me and my husband each get cash spending every 2 weeks. Amazon subscriptions. I recently added cash for restaurant eating, and then our bill at the local co-op for diesel for my husband's truck. That bill used to come out of this first paycheck. I've changed how I'm doing that a little bit since whatever paycheck this was in March. And then I always put down here, I'm working on saving, $50 a time or whatever, and working on an emergency fund, as well as adding money to my kids' savings accounts. And then this is where I add. So some things that were like sinking funds, I add them down here in the bottom. So they came back in. That money was paid with money in a sinking fund, but I brought it back in and I recorded it here in the extra section. So then after the budget page, I kind of made myself a notes page, and here's what I do, because my sinking funds, which I'll show you, this is how I record for every paycheck what I'm doing. So for my sinking funds, I'm putting $500 in car gas. Out of car gas for my bill, our bulk gas barrel fill is $9.08. For the co-op diesel is $2.05, and then into sinking funds again, $2.85 for car insurance, $100 for summer daycare. I do all the math on that, and that leaves taking $228 total out of sinking funds for this paycheck. And I also keep track of credit card. There are some expenses that we put on the credit card, some bills, so to earn points. So our electric bill, our Amazon subscriptions, our phone bill, that kind of stuff goes on the credit card. I pay it with the credit card, and then I have a list here of things that need to go on the credit card with this paycheck, because those are bills I paid with this paycheck. And then I also make a list of what I need to get out for cash. I don't always take my cash. As you can see, I didn't check that there. I'm one for online spending. And so sometimes if I don't have a cash expense or something that I plan to use that $60 for, I will put it towards something online, or if I bought something else, I'll put it back on the credit card or whatever. So I use that as a notes page. And so this is the second paycheck of the month. And for that, this is our HELOC, which is our home equity line of credit. It's essentially our mortgage right now, it's basically a mortgage. Again, church, we pay our cell phone with the second paycheck. Netflix and Amazon Prime come out, an internet bill when we have one. We pay daycare again, and I usually once a month put money on the school lunch account for my son, as well as a truck payment. We didn't have a vehicle payment for over a year, and in November, my husband's truck died in the field while I was staring at it, and so we now have a truck payment that I'm working on getting rid of. I put money away for vehicle registration for the second paycheck. I put money away for Christmas. I put money away. I'm working currently on summer daycare. I'm not currently working on LP, but I will get to my sinking funds in a minute. Groceries, restaurant cash, my husband's cash. Sometimes I'll set money aside for miscellaneous and just put it in an envelope if we have some additional money. And then for the second paycheck, I usually do an online order, which goes on the credit card, and then I pay it back of diapers, wipes, pull-ups. We don't have anyone in diapers anymore, but I have some kiddos still in like nighttime pull-ups and wipes. So yeah, that's stuff for the second, and then any extra comes down here. And then it's again the same thing with the notes pages for the sinking funds. I had to put 50 into car registration and 50 into Christmas. Things that went on the, my cash went on the credit card, 200 for the cell phone bill, $100 extra. So there's what I need to make for a credit card payment. And there's our cash totals. And then I just put a check mark by it when I've either transferred it, like the sinking funds, or that there. So what I got into here was life and envelope stickers. So I'm excited going forward. I have a bunch of these set up so I don't have to write out my own, and it gives me more room. So I've been doing the budget headers, these stickers for like our budget and what we do. And I've really changed kind of how I'm doing things. I take 2 of our paychecks and I try to budget it down to 0 or close to 0. There's a certain amount that we leave in for miscellaneous expenses just because we have too much miscellaneous spending. I'm aware of it. I haven't done the work to figure out how to track it and budget for some of those things. So I just leave that chunk of miscellaneous money in there to get us through to the next 2 weeks. So then I kind of started doing a check-in where I was actually paying attention to bills, debt, household, cash spending, sinking funds, figuring out my categories. What has been a struggle for me for the longest time is I don't know what categories to track. And I think so much of that is based on what you want to know. And honestly, there wasn't much that I wanted to know. Like, bills can just, whatever, it is what it is. But I am starting to pay attention to how much we are eating out, how much I am eating out, swiping my debit card after the cash that we have budgeted for eating out. So usually the cash for eating out is like our whole family of 5 going out. When we go out to a restaurant, our favorite restaurant in our little town is Rancho Viejo. When we go out to eat there, it's easily $60 for a family of 5 to order, plus, an appropriate tip for having to clean up after, our kids. But what happens is if I'm working out of the area, I will like stop and swipe my card at a local restaurant for a sandwich or whatever if I don't have something to take for lunch that easily works with me on the road. So that's where I get caught up in that. And I've been paying attention to that. My husband goes to Casey's every now and again. That's what our spending money is for. But we're also not on a tight enough budget that like we don't have the option. Like we know that there's money in the account for miscellaneous. And so we do use that. And whether that's good or bad, like it just is. It is what it is. But I have been starting to track that. But again, I don't feel like that's necessary. Like this starting to track is me like moving forward with our budget. I don't feel like it's something that's, that I've done before, that I've really put a lot of weight in. And I don't feel like you have to do it in order to efficiently pay your bills and know that your stuff is taken care of. Obviously, you don't know where all of your dollars are going, but at the end of the day, that's not everyone's focus. Sometimes the focus is like getting by, things being paid, and surviving until the next payday. And that's okay too. Wherever you're at is okay. So I am starting and putting in some trackers, and I'll have a video coming up. I've been using these. I'm just trying to get through here for a little while, but anyway. I've got some things set up. I like to set things up in advance, but I'm waiting on an order from Life and Envelopes for some more headers, but I've got like 6 paychecks like this set up where I'm going to do the paycheck. I'm going to do the notes page here, and then I'm going to do expense tracking 2 pages in a row. Next paycheck, we're going to have the budget notes with what do I put in sinking funds, what all of the things, and then the 2 expense tracking pages. On the notes page where I say where everything goes, I have room to come back and say I spent this much on debt, I spent this much on this. I have room on that page to do that on that notes page. The second thing that has been most helpful in getting on top of my finances and not feeling like I'm always drowning is sinking funds. So some of these things, this is kind of how I've always tracked my sinking funds, the things that I save up money for. I was doing sinking funds before I knew that sinking funds were a thing. I just finally realized that in order to do things like we pay our home and car insurance every 6 months, and in order to have money for that when that came up, I needed to save for it. And pull it out every month. The same thing with vehicle registration. It only happens once a year, and it's this, oh my gosh, this big expense. And I'm like there's a way to plan for that. So I have vehicle registration where I put aside $50 a month. I just pulled out here as you can see, in April, because my car registration for my vehicle is due in May. And then my husband's, all of his things, his truck, van, motorcycle, and a trailer maybe, will come due in September. So I'll just keep putting $50 in and it should fill back up in time for September. Summer daycare. Right now I have 2 kids in like full-time education programs and I'm paying no daycare. So this summer I'm going to have a hefty adjustment in my budget to put all 3 kids in full-time daycare, and so I'm saving up money for that. LP, for those of you who are familiar with rural living or heating sources, we have a large LP tank in our house, and that supplies the heat to our home, our garage, and it's also for our water heater. So we get a bill, we use LP all year round for our water heater, but it's a very small amount. It's in the winter months that it costs a lot of money to fill that up, and I know that there are different ways I could organize that with my energy company to give them money every month to put on my account, and I just choose not to for a variety of reasons, so I save up money for it. That's usually where I'm sinking the most money, and I have diverted it to summer daycare, because that obviously needs to get taken care of first, and then when that is taken care of, I will put money back, focusing on LP. Home and car insurance, we have our homeowner's insurance, and then car insurance for a Suburban, a van, his truck, a motorcycle, or side-by-side. That might be all. They're all bundled together, and I save the money up for that, and we pay, both of them come due in May. I actually messed up on the math somehow. I thought I took into account the difference between his old truck and new truck that changed in November, but as I'm seeing the bills starting to come in May, I don't have enough, and so I'm finding ways to put extra in there right now and diverting extra money to that to try to pad it a little bit more so that in May I'm not scrambling to fix that. So anyway, even with sinking funds, sometimes that happens if things get messed up. So car gas, here's the next, we'll talk about Christmas first. I set money aside for Christmas. I didn't do that in April because that's one of those things. Christmas is pretty far away. I took $50 of that and it went in here to my home and car insurance to try to build that up. But I do put $50 a month away for Christmas. We don't do a lot for our kids for Christmas because so many people buy for them, but this does help with teacher gifts. From the kids, like I get sentimental things for their godparents, my brother, my husband's brother and his wife, grandparents, that kind of thing. So it helps offset those costs. Property taxes, our property taxes we pay out of pocket. They come due twice a year. Not that I don't save up money, but I don't save up money monthly for them. What we talked about here, so we have these extra paychecks, this third paycheck a month, and I use those. So in June and December, I have all of my expenses figured out to go in a month with 2 paychecks. So this extra paycheck, we still have things like grocery, spending money, daycare, like that, but there's no other bills. So a really big chunk in June can go into a sinking fund, and I overestimate because I don't know yet what my taxes are for September. I overestimate and I throw whatever in that property tax sinking fund because they're due in September. And I do the same thing in December because they will come again due again in March. That's how I do property taxes. Vehicle repairs, I'm not saving anything for that right now. I have in the past. It's been helpful. Right now, that's just not a main focus. We're generally able, my husband is a mechanic, so I pay nothing for labor costs. It's just parts that we have to buy for our vehicles, thankfully. So that's something that we can generally cover with our extra miscellaneous budget when those things do happen. Again, at this point. Tattoo fund, right? If you've watched my videos, you can see I like tattoos with a bonus or just whatever. If there's something I'm looking to get, I will save up some money in a tattoo fund. I'm not right now, but I do have a spot there in case I change my mind. All right, and so the last sinking fund that I have is car gas. And so this is something that might not, probably isn't common for a lot of people, but we live rurally. We have right down the road at my mom's farm, we have a bulk gas barrel. We have a bulk gas barrel, and we fill that as it needs filled, and then we have a bulk gas purchase. This is for a lot of reasons. It goes back to when I first moved here. I was first moved back home. I was living with my parents and driving a lot more than I am now, but still driving for work and then being paid mileage at the end of the month. So, and that's still the case. I drive a little bit less, but I still have that mileage that I'm required to drive for work and pay the cost up front and then get reimbursed that mileage rate. So I put money in our budget into a car gas sinking fund as well as my mileage reimbursement checks. And then I figured it's depending on the situation, it's right about 6 weeks in between gas fills. And I actually did some math just out of my own curiosity to see how much we were actually using, because it's one of those things that I can't do anything about. Like, I mean, I could do some different things on my personal gas usage to curb some of those things, but I'm required to drive for my job, and that varies week to week depending on my schedule, which I set myself. But at the end of the month, like, I need to have all the things in that I need to have in, regardless of how many trips to different towns that took. So anyway, in this gas sinking fund, I put some money in with my first check, plus I put my mileage reimbursement checks in there, or a portion of them. And then I transfer it out whenever I need to pay the bill to fill that gas bill. And so what I mentioned that I was doing the 5-star co-op diesel bill a little bit different. Since my husband got a different truck that's a little bit more reliable, there have been a few situations and he's driving it a little more often. And I was seeing that the $100 that I was just paying or planning on paying with the first paycheck every month wasn't always covering the diesel bill. And so I started putting that amount and maybe a little bit more into this sinking fund and just budgeting to pay for his personal diesel out of this to the co-op every month. So this car gas now also includes the truck diesel bill with our local co-op. So that's how I handle that sinking fund. So as much as I may be okay and have figured out the process of saving money for future bills, like sinking funds, I do struggle to save for the process of saving. So I've been focusing on this emergency fund savings challenge and tracking that. And I have little by little, because I'm good at, if I get a tax refund, I can put that whole tax refund on debt or whatever, but to do stuff little by little and see that those things add up is important. So each of these circles is $10. So I'm at $740 towards my $1,000 emergency fund savings challenge. I do have a tracker for the Christmas sinking fund, but honestly, I haven't been that excited about using it. I'm really okay with just how I do it here and just seeing the math. It was good for this one because I've never done this before and seeing it, but I have not been as invested in completing this one. And then bill due dates. Again, I see a lot of calendars that have these for people who budget, and so I just made a perpetual one, like a running list, and put them on there. But honestly, I don't feel like I use it or necessarily need it. Because it doesn't so much matter the due date to me. I have it split up and I make each of these payments and account for them during the specific paycheck when I cover them. So the date they're actually due doesn't really matter because I'm able to pay them with the paychecks that they're allocated to. So that's just kind of a basic budget overview. And so I wanted to go back and just share the two biggest things for me that made the biggest difference in really getting a handle on my finances and being successful, at least successful to me with my finances. I might not do all the things that everyone else does, but for my goals and for my family, I've been successful in, getting rid of some of that additional debt and keeping things where I want it. So those two things, again, in summary, is number one, having the plan of which bills get paid with each paycheck, knowing that all of these things are due, between with this paycheck and when I would get paid next. So they need to be paid with the 3/10 paycheck and doing that. And then the same thing for which things need to be paid with the second paycheck. And just knowing that and being able to stick to that consistently. So I'm not late and I'm not running behind and I'm not trying to play catch up to get ahead. That has been the first thing that has helped me to be most successful. And the second thing is by far sinking funds, especially for the larger purchases. So I started with the registration and the home and car insurance, because I pay way less on my home and car insurance if I can pay 6 months. If I can pay 6 months at a time rather than paying monthly. And I understand that takes whatever to get caught up in the first place, and whether it's a tax refund or whatever, however you can strategize to get ahead, if you can do that and pay that in a lump sum going forward, it's hugely beneficial. But these sinking funds to plan ahead for these expenses, and again, I was doing these two things before I knew that they were called sinking funds, probably before I had a separate account. I just set aside the money for it in my main account and wrote the check at the end of 6 months or the end of a year for this. So that is super important. That has been the second most helpful thing for me, is sinking funds to plan for large and periodic expenses. so that I'm not caught so off guard with that. So those have been my 2 most successful strategies. And so I just thought I would share that with anyone who is looking for a place to start or doesn't know where to start or is overwhelmed by the idea of starting one or both or whatever of those things were the biggest things for me. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content and think you would like to see more, please subscribe. And until next time, have a great day.